In this week's parasha, Parashat Hukat, there's a Dvar Torah that the yeshiva world likes to tell over to inspire the yeshiva bachers to learn stronger and give their all and to be amelim and to really toil in the Torah. So this is the very beginning of the Torah of the parasha. It's on the simple pshat level. It's speaking about purity and impurity and the tumah of a dead body in a tent or not. But here the pasuk is taken in the Gemara as a total homiletic, total midrashic understanding of the pasuk, nothing to do with the actual pshat. So the pasuk says as follows: Zot HaTorah, Adam ki yamut ba'ohel. This is the Torah, or it literally means this is the halacha when a person dies in the tent. But the Gemara says no. If you open up the Gemara, says Reish Lakish. This is a Gemara in Berachot Samach Gimel Amud Bet. So the Amar Reish Lakish, Minayin she'ein divrei Torah mitkayimim ela b'mi shemamit atzmo aleya. From where do we know that you can never really retain the Torah and really remember it and understand it, except unless you're a person who kills himself, shemamit atzmo, who's going to be so devoted that it says if you're dying for it, aleya, for the Torah. Shneimar, it says in our pasuk, Zot HaTorah, this is the Torah, Adam ki yamut ba'ohel. When a person is willing to die in the tent here, the ohel, we know that Yaakov Ishtam Yeshevu Alim, it's the ohel of Torah, that ohel is a tent of Torah. Only the person that's going to yamut ba'ohel is willing to die for the tent, i.e. die for the Torah, that's the person that can retain it. So learning Torah requires total, complete devotion, and what you have to be willing to dedicate your whole life in the tent of Torah. Okay, beautiful, famous Dvar Torah from the Gemara. We have to work really, really hard when we learn Torah. It's going to be a big, difficult process to really understand and remember and learn the Torah. Beautiful. Okay, so I saw a beautiful idea in the Shlach Kadosh. The Shlach Kadosh takes us to a very different level, and I think it relates to a lot of stuff we said in previous Divrei Torah over the years, and I think it makes a nice summary of what's really going on. So says the Shlach Kadosh, this is in Sefer Toldot Adam Remazeh Otiot. Okay, so Ayin Sham, he says as follows. We'll read it inside, but let's go step by step through it because I think there's a lot of stuff to gain out of it. He says, Hina Torah hi ahat. He says, the Torah, it's one. We know there's only one, there's a unity to Torah. Kmo shekatuv, Torah achat, as it says in the Pasuk in Bamidbar, God gave us one Torah. But he says, wait a second. Vihi shtei Torot, but really it's two Torahs. Why? The Hainu Torah shebechtav and Torah shebe'al peh. Because we have a written Torah and we have an oral Torah. So what do you mean we have only one Torah, the achdut of the Torah, the oneness, the unity of the Torah? Really, there's supposed to be two. He says, no. Uve'emet hakol Torah achat. In truth, everything is one single Torah. Ki kol Torah shebe'al peh remuza beTorah shebechtav. Because the whole Torah shebe'al peh is hinted to in the actual Torah shebechtav, in the written Torah. So you read the written Torah, and this is how you have to put the commentators on the Midrashim and all that. They're going to show you the extra yud over here, the extra letter, the extra crown, the extra word. All the Torah shebe'al peh is hinted to in the Torah shebechtav. And he says, and this is why it says in the Gemara, Kegon kol minalan, whenever it says in the Gemara, from where did you learn this? Umenahani mile, where are these words from? And there's nothing that isn't hinted to very clear and very well in the Torah. But rather, what's the problem? The problem is us. He says our sechel, our mind has become darkened. We don't fully see it. We don't get the hint. We don't see the hint. But really, it's all there. It's all there. But he says, no, but why did that happen? Why is it that we need a Torah shebe'al peh? Why don't we just have a Torah shebechtav and be able to see it clearly? So he says, the or hasechel nitma'et. He says the light of our mind lessened, it weakened. Why? Besibat chet Adam. Because after Adam Rishon sinned, his sin led to it that our mind has become much weaker. Shenignaz ketonet or, because if we're talking about the light of the mind, the or of the mind, the ketonet or, the original garments of light that we said originally he was light, he was translucent, and he was wearing these garments, these robes of light, were taken off, they were hidden away. V'nitlabesh be'or. And the ketonet or with an aleph became a ketonet or with an ayin, meaning leather, meaning skin, be'ayin. And he says pithily, he says, Einaim lahem v'lo yiru, as we say, and you have the ayin, you have the eyes, v'lo yiru, but you don't see it. There's a play on that pasuk about Avodah Zarah, but he's saying over here, Einaim lahem v'lo yiru. He doesn't have, we have, the aleph became an eye, became an ayin, but we're blind. Now we can't see because we lost the light for the physicality, for the gashmiut of the leather, the or with an ayin. And he says, says, Vizeu vayavdel tzafak Kadosh Baruch Hu v'nignezu. Quoting a Gemara, he's hinting to a Gemara in Chagigah Yud Bet. He's referencing the Gemara over there speaks about that originally when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the light and darkness, the pasuk says, vayavdel ben or lachoshech. Hashem separates between the light and the darkness. And the Gemara in there in Chagigah has a long teaching that originally there was this great light that Adam could see from one corner to the next corner, but then HaKadosh Baruch Hu ultimately hid it away. It sounds over there like the guy hid it away a little bit because he knew that we're going to sin or because of the sin. I'm not sure what the chronology exactly, but the idea is that Hashem hid away Nignaz, the special or for the tzaddikim, Latid Lavo, the special light. This is the ketonot or with an aleph. The garments of light with an aleph were hidden away and no longer are in this world. It's for the Latid Lavo. But he says the Shlah continues the Shlah. And now that the sechel of man, the mind of man, has been weakened, the Torah shebichtav is no longer fully understood. Only after really toiling and working very, very hard. As the rabbis taught us in Brachot, which we mentioned at the start of this Dvar Torah, you cannot really retain the Torah unless you're willing to die for it, to give all your strength towards it, devote yourself completely to intense Torah study. Shne'emar, Zot Torah, Adam Kiyamut Ba'ohel. Now, I was thinking beautifully, midrashically, Chazal tell us the same thing happened after the chet of the egel. That originally at Matan Torah, we got back to that level. We lost the zomat hanachash, the venom of the snake left us. We were basically on the level back of Adam HaRishon. But then we sinned with the egel hazahab, and it came back, and we lost it all. And the language of the first luchot versus the second luchot that we've also spoken a lot about in the past, that the first luchot, they say, had everything in it. The Torah Sheba'al Peh was even in it as well. We would have never forgotten anything. We would have been so much easier. We wouldn't have to toil and work so much harder. We wouldn't have needed the Torah Sheba'al Peh. But then, because we sinned, similar to Adam HaRishon, we went back to that level. So you actually find in the Midrashim a very similar language between the two, and a similar effect of our sechel being weakened, and we have to now work much harder ourselves. Continues the Shlah Kadosh, says the Shlah, and this is the reason why we have to have a perush, an explanation, a Torah Sheba'al Peh, for the Torah Shebichtav, for the written Torah, the Hainu Talmud. This is why we need the Talmud. Because not for all that we just said, not the sin that took place of Adam HaRishon, or like we're saying by the Egel as well, would have been able to understand it on the spot. And he says we see this in every generation. The previous generations, the earlier generations, the earlier rabbis, they had a very clear sechel. They understood clearer. They were closer to Matan Torah. It was clear for them. They can understand something very, very deep without a perush. But then afterwards, they needed an explanation. First we had the Mishnah, then we had the Gemara, and then we have the Rishonim, then we have the Achronim. Pirush al Pirush, and says the Shlah. And then afterwards we have an explanation on an explanation. Hakol lefi cheshchat hasechel. It all goes based on the darkening that takes place with our minds. Al ken ilu lo chata Adam ve'haya sechel bahir. And therefore he says, if man would have never sinned, if Adam Rishon would have never sinned in the first place, we'd have a clear sechel. It would be lit up. It would be easy to understand. It would be barur for us. Haya mevin Torah shebichtav. He would be able to read the Torah shebichtav, the written Torah, just read it straight and understand it. And from this simple reading of the Torah Shebichtav, he would have understood everything, got into all the depths of the Torah Sheba'al Peh on his own. I heard once the story about the Gaon Mevilna. The Gaon Mevilna, at the end of his life, he would just read the Chumash, and he would think of all the Gemarot, and he'd go to Gidu Chazara on the Gemara based on the Chumash, because he already knew how to make all those connections that the Gemara does itself. But he says, if Adam would have never sinned, it's only because he sinned. That's why we need the Torah Sheba'al Peh, because we lost the light. And also, now beautifully connecting it back to our parasha, and this ultimately brings death into the world. And because he brought death into the world, because he brought mita into the world, therefore, this is why we have to toil so hard and have a Torah Sheba'al Peh, shehu perush, which is the explanation, ve'la'amit atzmo aleya. And that's why beautifully our pasuk says, or our Gemara says on our pasuk, we have to die for it, because he brought death into the world. We now have to give all of our physical kochot Belamit atzmo aleya, and to be willing to die for it. He says, and then eventually, that's why every so often, originally Torah Shabbat, we're not supposed to write down, but you see that we are writing it down, but then we're creating oral Torah on what we wrote down, but then it becomes harder for us to understand. So we write that down, and then we write more oral Torah. And actually, in the old Sfarim, people used to justify why the oral Torah, why they were allowed to write down their Torah, because the oral Torah that we had up until that point that was written was still not enough for us. And I actually think it's a little ironic that I actually came up with the Shla, not from being the Shla Kadosh itself. The Shla is a very complicated sefer, but I got the Oz v'Hadar edition of Rabbeinu B'Hayeh, and in this edition, Rabbeinu B'Hayeh was one of the later Rishonim. He was a student of the Rashba, who was a student of the Ramban, and he has a lot of really deep stuff in his commentary that he hints to so much in. And just to read it on your own, I miss out on so much. When you read the if you read the Ramban, all these commentators, without reading the commentaries on them, it's just so much harder. So Oz v'Hadar did a great job of explaining word for word what he's hinting to, what do the words mean, first off, literal translation, then what he's hinting to, and then they even have on the bottom some extra sources. And in this case, the extra source over here, this is on page 10 in their intro, to Bereshit, they quoted the Shla Kadosh, so they're bringing outside sources. So we see it's their Perush, this is their Perush on the Perush of Rabbeinu B'Chayeh that even brings up this Torah. But B'ezrat Hashem, we should be zocheh to really toil in that Torah and be able to uncover all those things that originally what came so naturally. And then B'ezrat Hashem, we should be zocheh to that level back at Matan Torah, that level of Adam HaRishon, where our the eyes will go back to the proper place, and we'll re-put on our Kutonet, or with an olive, we'll put on those robes of light. Shabbat Shalom.